Good evening, everyone. We'll wait for one more minute and then we'll start the session. Today's topic is revolutionizing clinical trials, how we can revolutionize clinical trial by use of clinical trial, virtual clinical trial or remote clinical trial monitoring. So we'll wait for 1-2 minutes more and then we'll go ahead with the session. So today's topic is interesting. We are going to discuss about remote monitoring in clinical trials and also how remote monitoring is being conducted in different specific therapeutic areas, like including oncology or rheumatology or cardiology. So how are we going to implement remote monitoring in this therapeutic areas? We are going to discuss about it. And then we are going to discuss about the third point, which is remote monitoring tools and applications, how the remote monitoring tools and applications are being used. And the fourth point, what are the advantage of remote monitoring? What are the different advantages of remote monitoring we have? We'll be discussing about the remote monitoring advantages. And fifth point, what are the disadvantages of remote monitoring? What are the cons of the remote monitoring? We'll be discussing, and we'll be coming up with a conclusion that what remote monitoring in clinical trials, how it is revolutionizing or how it is changing the entire system of clinical trial. We are going to discuss in the conclusion, and also we are going to discuss about the future outbreak of remote monitoring or virtual monitoring, or how the remote monitoring in clinical trials have revolutionized the conduct of clinical trials. So now coming back to remote monitoring, what is remote monitoring and how the remote monitoring in clinical trials plays a major role with less intervention of monitors traveling or patient traveling for conduct of clinical trials. So now what exactly is remote monitoring? So these are referring to use of digital tools and applications or technologies to track and collect the clinical trial data without requiring the patients coming to visit to the sites frequently. So it means that these are the clinical trials which are conducted by the patients not traveling to hospitals or centralized locations. So they can sit at their homes, which are decentralized clinical trials. They don't need to come frequently to the site visits, but they will come only very few times to participate into clinical trials. Say, for example, the trial conducts some 10 visits, but they might not come for all 10 visits. They might only come for 2 or 3 visits, which requires the intervention of a specific lab test or specific conditions to be tested in patients. So where doctors can just verify what happens to the patients. So this is something which is called as decentralized clinical trial. Now coming back to remote monitoring. So the monitoring which is being conducted by CRAs or monitors remotely without going and traveling to the particular sites and looking at the paper documents or essential documents is considered as a remote monitoring. So remote monitoring is a process wherein they can enhance the data collections, and also they can make sure that the data integrity and quality of clinical trial data is not compromised, and it is following your ICH GCP and regulatory requirements as per your 21 CFR Part 11s. So it means that the monitor does not need to travel for every visit to review the data, but he will travel only for consecutive visits where it requires interventions to be looked by the monitors. So it is called as remote monitoring. So now how are we going to conduct remote monitoring? How are we going to conduct the decentralized clinical trials is by leveraging different technologies and tools and applications. The first technology which comes into picture is telemedicine. So by use of telemedicine, we can conduct more and more of decentralized clinical trials, wherein the patient can directly switch on the camera and listen to the doctor while he is participating into clinical trials. He can have wearable devices. The patient can use the wearable devices wherein the directly data is being collected by the systems, and the data is being continuously monitored because the patient is wearing a wearable sensors or devices wherein he can give information without his knowledge. He can give pass on the information to the system, which is mobile devices or wearable devices. Mobile health apps also will be there, wherein we have developed so many applications and mobile health apps which can be used for the patient to give the data, and also EHR data, electronic health records. So all together will help the monitors conduct remotely, not traveling for the each visit. The main objective of monitoring is to make sure the right safety and well-being of subjects are protected, and the data integrity is been quality and integrity of data is been correctly maintained. And the third point is the clinical trials are conducted as per your GCP and regulations. So there are three responsibilities of monitoring. So how do they do this is they have set of rules and regulations and responsibilities of monitoring, wherein they review the protocols, they review the ICFs, they review the drug accountabilities, they review the CVs, they review the SOPs, and they review the source document, they review the source document verification, they review the patient records, and they make sure that the clinical trial is being conducted as per your GCP and regulations and right safety and well-being of trial subjects are protected, and also data is credible and accurate. So now, what are the uses of decentralized clinical trials in specific to therapeutic areas? So, say for example, if you conduct a clinical trial in oncology, now patient has to come at every visit. But why patient has to travel when there is a huge risk of patient going into big problems? Because the drugs which are being used in cancer are immunocompromised or immunosuppressant. So the patients will be immunocompromised. So patients, if they come outside, there might be high chances of infection to the patient. So now why are we allowing the patients to travel outside very frequently for the checkups or for regular visits? Now, to reduce the number of visits for the patients in oncology, we have taken into consideration for decentralized clinical trials where patient does not need to frequently visit to the clinical trial sites. That is first disease or therapeutic area oncology, cardiology. Now, coming back to cardiology, how exactly we can use cardiology decentralized clinical trials? Enables continuous and real-time data collection, because cardiology you need the data collection continuously, real-time data, to understand the patient health conditions and patient cardiology conditions or health, and making sure that to detect the earlier adverse events, the earlier problems before it occurs, we can understand by using the wearables or sensor, by mobile health apps, wherein we can prevent the diseases. So this is about your cardiology. The third disease is diabetes. Now, how can we continuously monitor the diabetes? So we can provide the real-time glucose monitoring and make sure that the patient drug compliance is improved, and also the data is more accurate. So all these three things can be done when the clinical trials are conducted decentralizedly. So now, say for example, in COPD or diseases like asthma, respiratory disorders, so reduces frequent visits to clinical sites, especially patients living very far. They might not able to come and travel, so they might reduce the continuous travel visits for clinical trial sites. So now decentralized clinical trials will give advantage for the patients to participate into it. Saying for example, in cancer, there is less number of travel. In diabetes, less number of travels. Respiratory disorders, and also in cardiology, we have less number of disorders. Now, what are the tools or applications? What are the applications we use for conduct of decentralized or remote monitoring in clinical trials? So now, what are the different tools and applications we use it? First one is wearable, the smartwatches, the continuous glucose meters, and heart rate health monitors can be used as a wearable. So these are attached to the patients and they can give exact information what is happening to your health. Smartwatches, continuous glucose meters, and also the health rate monitors, and real-time tracking of vital signs and activity levels and glucose levels. Sensors can help all these activities for real time. The next one is mobile health apps. There are mobile health apps, the technology too. One is wearable, the mobile health apps. The apps allows the patients to report the signs and symptoms and medication adherence and side effects. There is an app where patient can go and say that I have taken a drug, which gets into compliance. I have got an advertisement, which gets into pharmacovigilance. I have got the signs and symptoms, which gets into reporting of advertisement. So app allows the patient to inform all the details. We can develop an app wherein it can collect the patient's reported signs and symptoms, and also medication adherence, and also the side effects, and patients reported health data very accurately and very smartly by using technologies like mobile health app. So telehealth platforms, virtual consultations, like patient has sitting at very far between clinician and patient, you can have the virtual telemedicines by using, make sure that the person in person visit is not required. Directly we can go and have a virtual consultation. EHR is one more thing, very important one. So integration of EHR, electronic health records, and electronic medical records, integrating of EHRs, making sure that patient history, medication usage, lab data, every data is being collected, and we are integrating whole EHR data to understand how clinical trial data can be assessed. So automates the data collection, integrates the clinical data easily for monitoring. So we have discussed about different tools and technologies. The first tool is wearable devices. The second one is mobile health apps. Third one is telemedicine, and fourth one is EHRs. Now, what are the advantage of decentralized clinical trials? So now the biggest advantage of patients conducting or participating into decentralized clinical trials is increased in patient convenience and compliance. So patient is complying more because he does not require to travel more. The second one, patients can participate from home, no need to travel, and travel burden has reduced. Real-time data collection by the patient, continuous real-time data collection by using wearables or mobile health apps or by using virtual consultation, allow more geographically diverse patients. More patients might come into your clinical trials, decentralized clinical trials. Remote monitoring expands the clinical trials to include patients from different rurals and undeserved areas also, and it reduces the cost associated to your clinical trial sites. You can reduce the cost of sites or patients or traveling, monitoring, logistics, everything. So virtual sites using telemedicine reduces overall cost of the participating into clinical trial. Now coming back to what are the disadvantage, not all the patients might have access to internet and technology. Elderly patients might find wearables or mobile health apps difficult. Remote data transmissions might have data privacy and compliance with GDP regulations and HIPAA regulations. Data breaches can happen. Devices might not be providing accurate data. Might be sometimes unreliable outcomes can come. And continuous data streams from remote data can overwhelm data and give validation and management of data. Now, what is overall decentralized clinical trials? How this decentralized clinical trials can be doing it? So, decentralized clinical trials is revolutionizing in clinical trial, providing unparalleled convenience and real-time data collection and broader access for geographical patients, and you can increase the number of patients, reduce the time, and reduce the cost, and making sure that patient is complying with almost all kind of the clinical trial. So despite of challenges related to data privacy and technology and data accuracy, the increased adoption of the decentralized clinical trials, like transforming the future of clinical trial, especially in advancement of AI and ML and data analysis and data science, and also virtual clinical trials have increased so much. So the future is on decentralized clinical trial, where the patient travel is reduced and where remotely you can conduct the clinical trial. So now I have covered most of facts. First one I have covered is your remote monitoring in the clinical trials and therapeutic areas, and the tools and applications which are used for decentralized clinical trials, and what are the advantage of decentralized clinical trial, what are the biggest advantage you have for conducting remote monitoring or decentralized clinical trials, and what are the disadvantage of decentralized clinical trial, and what are the conclusions we have, and what is the future outbreak of decentralized clinical trial or remote monitoring. So I'm open for questions. Quickly, if anyone have one or two questions, I can take it the questions. If not, we are good to close. So I would like to invite everyone to participate in PVPI week celebrations. So there are 6 days of celebrations which are happening from 17th to 23rd. Please do participate in PVPI week. And tomorrow I have LinkedIn live sessions. So please do attend on LinkedIn live session also. So anyone have any questions, you can ask me. If not, we are good to close this session. Okay, so no questions. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a nice rest of weekend. Thank you.